So, it's come to this.
Call me naive, but there is nothing hateful in this, so I don't get why this would be controversial. Races exist, and anybody who denies that fact should be mocked and humiliated just like we do to flat earthers or creationists. I don't give a shit if the reality of differences between the races leads people to some unsavory conclusions. The truth, however painful, can never be more dangerous than accepting lies.
My boy JF. Wow, dudes. This video. Mouthy. Yo. And your editing. Lamau. Incredible. Realism is common sense.
In before the video gets flagged by triggered people who haven't actually watched it.
It isn't exactly shocking that science illiteracy is creating an opening for the bunk of race realism to slip in. Not knowing the basics of causality, lurking variables, or even evolution creates gaps for pseudoscience to slither in, all through the lens of anti-social justice paranoia. All those comments you heard earlier are from a specific video that I think is especially deceitful and manipulative. Race Realism Explained from YouTuber Mouthy Hitler Apologist. It's narrated by Jean-Francois Garipe, I don't know, everyone just calls him JF, so I'm going to go with that. If this video were simply a basic educational primer on the basics of inheritable traits via genes, I'd have no problem with it. I mean, people will watch it, probably forget about it 15 minutes later, and we'd all get on with our lives. But what's really going on here is this video opens a door that will lead you down a rather treacherous path into becoming a out-and-out racist. Race is real as a social construct, but the biology of race is arbitrary. This video's attempt to tie the two together can only be described as sinister. Now, if you came here for the real deal on the science behind race, I highly recommend checking out YouTuber Concordance's videos on the subject. They go into great detail, they're easily digestible, and you'll actually learn something useful. And with that, let's get down in the mud. First, we'll start off with the video's description of race.
Races are subdivisions of the human species into groups that differ in various observable and heritable characteristics, including but not limited to skin color and facial features.
Skin color and physical features. Those heathens on the left have been saying race is only skin deep for decades, and this definition doesn't really go any further than that. But will it hold throughout the video? The differences, including, but not limited to, has me a little suspicious. And hey, here comes the next bit with this sinister line.
Finding these clusters merely allowed scientists to reaffirm our conclusion that races are real in humans.
It's so nice that it was written out for us too. Very helpful. The word reaffirm here is crucial. What this video is doing is confirming social conceptions of race. That is, confirming our stereotypes about race. It's almost as if that aforementioned including, but not limited to, had some secret, darker purpose. But maybe I'm being a little paranoid. Maybe there are no dog whistles here. So this is the part I was going to show that clip from one of Mouthy Buddha's streams about how he puts dog whistles in all of his videos, but apparently that's not online anymore, and the only version of it I could find was this clip of streaming personality Destiny watching said clip. So, sorry about that.
Uh-oh. I dog whistle all the time in my videos.
All the time. I know.
Like,
Oh, really?
there was only one time where I actually explicitly said something, but I do dog whistle. There's at least one or two dog whistles in every video, and it's just a bit of language.
Let's keep going. We get a little video interlude of just stuff about racism and how race realism has nothing to do with that. I just want to point out that the clips they used, they show some black guys beating up a white guy, a muscly white guy impressing some black guys, and a woman looking mentally distressed. That's Wow, very subtle subtext there. Oh, and there's Yao Ming. The video completely steps outside the bounds of commonly accepted biology and asserts that not all features that make up a race are a product of genetic transfer. That is to say, race isn't purely a result of genes.
Contrary to popular belief, race realism does not require all features of a race to be inherited through DNA transmission between parents and offspring. While it is believed that most characteristics of an individual, including skin color, hair color, and IQ, are heavily influenced by DNA, it is possible that other features that distinguish races may be passed down through generations via other mechanisms, such as epigenetics and differences in the way parents educate their children.
Right, he calls them other mechanisms for transmitting race, so yeah, social factors shape race. Big surprise. It's almost as if they're socially constructed. And just to look at these two mechanisms for a brief moment, I don't know what racial parenting means. What is black parenting and what is white parenting? Is that a difference, or do all white parents parent the same way? I'm sure there's a really stupid answer that they have for that, but is my response in advance. And epigenetics, those who may not know what that means, it is a sciencey sounding word, and it is actual science. Epigenetics basically means changes to gene expression without actually changing someone's genes. So here's a real world example. A person is born and they have a set of genes that will determine their height, say between 5'6" and 5'10". If this person has a healthy diet through childhood and adolescence, they'll grow up to that 5'10" area of their possible height. But if they're malnourished, they'll be closer to 5'6". So the two variables at play here in this example are the range of heights, which is the genetic one, and the amount of food a person eats, which is the epigenetic. This Guardian article by geneticist Adam Rutherford has a great analogy describing genes as sheet music and epigenetics being the notation that affects how these notes are played. Also, this article has some great information on how people use genetics as a backdoor to introduce nonsense pseudoscience, so definitely give it a read. Okay, back to the garbage video. Did you notice the little dance it did, moving away from mundane genetic expressions of skin features and traipsed into the world of social influences? This is basically how race realism acts as a Trojan horse, and it uses the essentialist idea of race. That is to say, race is an innate characteristic which divides us irrevocably. You see, we've got these biological factors and social factors, which are inherent parts of our character. Of course, that's silly if you think about it. The idea is to get you, as a supposed white person, to identify yourself as a member of the white race. And once you've bought into the notion of race realism and see yourself as a white person, you're ready to buy into the notion of an ethno-state. And just to clarify a little bit, when I say white person, I don't mean, your skin is white, because that may very well be true. I mean a white person who has white skin, but also ascribes to certain social beliefs and has white parenting, whatever that means. I still don't know what that means. And you have white epigenetic traits. Don't know what white epigenetic traits means either, but hey, these are the other factors that supposedly make up this totally real thing of race. Also, don't think I didn't notice this shit.
Skin color, hair color, and IQ are heavily influenced by DNA.
IQ, for fuck's sake. Oh, God. If you're trying to talk about IQ and genes, I can only assume your intentions are impure, or at best, driven by ferocious ignorance. For those that care, the short version is IQ is a product of our genes interacting with their environment. Why these would map onto skin color, I don't know. Facial features, I don't know. I don't know why that would be the case. There's some links in the description box that highlight the limitations of IQ, but knowing the sort of people who push IQ myths around, you don't really care about that. if you're listening to this, and I know you'll cling to whatever garbage research keeps you happily deluded, so feel free to ignore those. The rest of the video is just a brief summary and a tedious wrap-up montage, so that's about it. The whole video pointed out some blasé science and leaves the door open for a racist to walk in, so that's nice. But I'm going to show you how that works too, so we're going to quickly go to JF's gal pal, Tara McCarthy, who walks through that opening created by Race Realist. Here she is talking on a show called Culture Report with some guy.
But it turns out that certain groups that consistently perform very poorly seem to have, from what all the science is saying today and from what the cutting edge science in genome research is showing, is that they actually have a limited intelligence genetically as a group.
Now Tara here tries to talk about science and doesn't really get it. She mentions the work of Jean-Philippe Rushton, a controversial Canadian professor whose work in the 80s was later on widely discredited. Discredited, by the way, not by the political correctness brigade, but other scientists in a variety of different fields, including Rushton's own of psychology. He even debated famed Canadian geneticist David Suzuki in 1987, where this exchange happened.
Racial tensions have not been substantially changed over the past 2 decades, yet Rushton is claiming what Bodmer and Cavalli-Sforza clearly show cannot be proved. Why then does he persist? I don't know if he's a racist or what his motives are. I don't know him and I don't care. But one can only infer, on the basis of what geneticists have written, that he is either grossly ignorant or deliberately mischievous.
Also, Rushton said this during the debates.
Take a tape measure. Put it around people's heads. Measure the head circumference. I have found a small positive correlation between head size measured externally from around the head and IQ test scores and grades. Laugh if you want to.
Yeah. He says we should measure head sizes to predict test scores. For those that don't know, it's phrenology he's talking about. Phrenology is a completely discredited science as of the 19th century. But you know what? It doesn't really matter if Tara is spreading bad science maliciously or if she just isn't bright enough to understand it. The important thing here is that she's introducing us to the idea that science proves all the racist things we believed in the past, or as one video would put it.
Finding these clusters merely allowed scientists to reaffirm our conclusion that races are real in humans.
And that's the sleight of hand going on. This is how people are being moved down a pipeline. You start off as someone who just wants the science about race, right? Just the facts. So, you click on a video supposedly explaining race realism, and this video tells you that race is something that's scientifically stamped on you. And then you're moved down this weird route where you're told you should see yourself as a white person, and then all of a sudden a person says, hey, white person, don't you want an ethno-state? You know, the Chinese, they have theirs, and people in Africa have countries. Don't you as a white person want one? And you think, huh, that sounds pretty good. You might think, hey, maybe there's something to this whole kicking the colored people out of our country thing. Bam! You're now a racist. Also, I just want to point out...
And another group that actually tends to have higher intelligence on average than whites is Japanese, South Korean, Chinese, and other peoples who have evolved in very harsh winter conditions as Europeans did.
What does that even mean? Harsh winters. I'm in the middle of a harsh winter right now, and I'm not really feeling any smarter living in a country where my face feels like it's constantly falling off when I go outside. But hey, at least my descendants will be better at math because of that, right? So basically that's what's going on here. If you want to know the truth about race, I've pointed you in the right direction. And these people with their slick productions and fancy ways of trying to teach you some bullshit science are really just a big scheme. Race realism isn't alternative science. It's a front for racism. The same way intelligent design was a front for creationism. You know, I probably could have said that and most of you would have understood it, but hey, we learned together in this video. Much love.